Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at arrays in JavaScript. These are some of the different topics that we're going to cover, some of a couple methods native to arrays, and we're also going to look at how to access arrays, how to access elements in an array. So let's get right to it. Cool. So first thing we're going to start off with is, so we're going to start with a less conventional way of working with arrays. So to kind of like declare an array, you could do something like let array, and then you could use the new keyword and then use array. And then for the constructor, so the way this kind of works is, so if you left this, if you only pass in one argument to the array, what it's going to do is, for example, let's say we pass in array 1 right now, and if we go ahead and come over here and console.log array, and now we give that a run, now we get an empty array that has a length of 1, essentially. Cool. If we went ahead here, we changed this to 5, then we're going to get an empty array that has a length of 5. So it has 5 empty spots that can receive elements. Okay. So this only works this way if you pass in one argument to it. So if you pass in 10 or 20 or whatever, it's going to create an empty array for you with the delegated length. But if you pass in multiple arguments, let's say we pass in 12 for A or something, then it's going to go ahead and create an array for us that has the amount of elements that we pass in. So if we come here and do node file name, we get an array with those 3 elements in there. So just to keep in mind, that's the way this kind of works. If you want to go ahead and declare an array like this, if you pass in one value in there, for example, like 12 or something like that, it's just going to create an array for you, an empty array of that length. So it's going to be an array of length 12 that has 12 empty spots, essentially, 12 spots that says undefined. And I'm actually curious. Let's say if we just passed in one argument, but it was like a string or something. Let's see what happens in that situation. Yep, in that situation, it just creates an array for us with the one element. Cool, so that's like your unconventional way of kind of working with arrays. Typically, when someone is working with arrays, you just use your bracket notation. So what we're going to do is we're going to declare a variable here, call it array. Boom, and just like that, we have our array. We give this a run. Well, first let's console log it, give it a run. We get an array that has no values in there. And also, if we go ahead and do console.log array.length, we should get a length of 0. Cool, because we don't have anything inside of our array right now. Cool. So if you want to go ahead and add stuff into your array, so whenever you're working with arrays in JavaScript, a really helpful method that you should know is the dot push method. Okay, so essentially with the dot push method, that allows us to add an item to the end of the array. So for this array here, I'm gonna go ahead and I guess in a way seed it with some couple of values. All right, so let's do this. Give this a run. We get a length of 3. Cool. Now let's go ahead and look at that dot push method. So whenever we're working with arrays in JavaScript, if we want to go ahead and add an element to the end of the array, we use the dot push method. So we come here, do array dot push, and then we could pass in anything we want into this array. So let's go ahead and just, I don't know, pass in some random string. So we push this, so this should be added to the end of our array right now. So it should say A10 go, and then that hyphen. Save. Cool, and that's what we get in there. So the dot push method is what you use to add an element to the end of the array. Let's say you wanted to go ahead and remove the last element that was in the array. All you have to do is come here and do something like array.pop. So there's a pop method for that. And what that's going to do is it's going to go ahead and remove the last element that we have in our array. So if we go ahead and log this right here, a log array again, now we should get an array that looks similar to the original array we had. We should get that hyphen removed from the end of the array. So let's give that a run. Cool. And as you can see, the first log was the log we had on line 9, and that was after we just added the that's the hyphen. And then the next one was on line 13 after we ran the dot pop method, and that removed that for us. And that's what we got with that log. So that's how we would go about working with elements towards the end of your array. Let's say you wanted to go ahead and add an element to the beginning of your array. In that instance, all you would do, let me just delete this. All you would do is there's essentially a method called unshift, okay? And that's the method you would run if you want to go ahead and add something to the beginning of your array. So let's go ahead and add playoff P. And next we're going to come here, do a console.log of array, save it. Now let's give it a run. Now we get our array with playoff P as the first element because we ran that unshift method, so that added that string for us to the beginning of the array. If we wanted to go ahead and remove an element from the beginning of our array, then we would go ahead and run the shift method, okay? So if you want to go ahead and remove an element from the beginning of your array, there's a built-in method called shift. It kind of works the exact same way as pop, except pop takes the element from the end of the array, shift removes the element from the beginning of the array. So if we come here, do a console.log of array, now we should get an array similar to the one we started off with on line 5. Cool, they took out playoff P for us. If we go ahead and add another one, save it, go ahead and add another one. Now they take out playoff P and A. So we only have 10 and go left on there. Cool. So that's it for those main methods whenever you're working with arrays. Next thing that I kind of want to go over is accessing arrays by their index. So if we come here, we wanted to go ahead and access some of the elements we have in our current array. We could do something like array bracket 0, okay? And if we come here and run this, and now it's going to go ahead and print whatever element we have in our array at index 0. So that for us, right now, that's A. Change this to 2, should print go. All right, cool. And also when working with arrays, so essentially there's an index of property. So if you wanted to, let's say you had an array, for example, we have our array right now on line 5 that has those 3 elements. Let's say I wanted to go ahead and figure out which index one of those elements was in. So there's a built-in method for arrays for that called IndexOf. So for example, we could declare a variable, call it position, and do let position equal to array dot index of, and then we pass in whatever we want. So let's say we wanted to pass in 10. Now let's give that a run. Well, before, let's go ahead and log the position variable. Save it, let's give it a run. We get 1 printed to the console. That's because 10 is in index 1 in our array right now. Let's say we change this to A, give it a run. We get index 0. It lets us know exactly at what index our position is. Cool. And also when working with arrays, there's a really helpful method called Dot Splice, okay? And essentially that helps us remove an element from an array at a certain position, all right? So let's say we have our array right now on line 5. We wanted to go ahead and remove whatever element it is we have at position 1. All we'd have to do is come here and do something like array dot splice, okay? And then once we're in this dot splice method, it takes in two arguments, so it has place for it has two parameters. The first argument you pass in is the position from where you want to start removing elements in your array from. Okay. For example, let's say I wanted to remove 10 in our array, which is an index 1. I would pass in 1 here. And then the second argument is essentially just asking how many elements in the array do you want to remove starting at that index. So for us, let's say we wanted to remove 0 elements from that array. Let's say we come over here now and do a console.log of array. We should get the exact same array printed to the console without any changes happening to it. Just like that. And that's because we're telling it we don't want to remove anything. Let's say we wanted to remove 1 element from the array starting at index 1. Now it's going to remove 10 from that array for us. Let's give it a run. It does just that. Let's say we change this to 2. Now it's going to remove 2 elements from the array starting at index 1. So it's going to remove index 1 and index 2. So for us, that's 10 and go. So we have 8 left. All right, cool. I guess the last thing we could look at when working with arrays in JavaScript is the .for each method. So instead of writing a regular for loop, if you want, there's a .for each method. So if you come here, do something like array .for each. Let's say we pass in L for element, and we could come here, run a loop through everything. So we could say this is L from array. Cool. And all that's going to do is go ahead and print out to the console a string that says this is L from array, and then our element. Cool. Oh, the reason it's only printing that once is because remember we're running that dot splice method on line 11, so we technically only have one thing in our array right now. To fix that, let's take out the dot splice method, and we should get 3 strings now. Awesome. Cool. So if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. That's pretty much all I wanted to go over. We went over a couple of stuff. We went over the for each method, IndexOf, push, pop, shift, unshift. We looked at accessing elements from an array by their index. We looked at creating an array by using like the array class. Yeah, so again, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.